Our opening words this morning are from Marjorie C. Squire. Children all, we come together in faith and hope to find what meaning life holds for us, to laugh and sing with one another, to soothe soothe the wounds of daily life, and to grow together in wisdom and love. Our gathering music for today is a song about choosing to hold different religious and worldviews than the one that we were taught as children. It's by Peter Meyer and it's called Holy Now.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, everything is whole now.
Good morning. My name is Karma Amos, and I'm honored to serve as the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Central Delaware. And I'm honored to welcome you to worship this morning. Whether it's your first time with us or attending Sunday services is part of your regular spiritual practice, we're glad that you're here, and we hope that you will find room in this community for your spirit. We continue to be grateful for the technology that allows us to worship together online and continue to build community in other ways. Thank you in advance for your patience and grace with us if we have any delays or glitches. And thanks to both Michael and Sarah for being our Zoom techs this morning. In addition to our worship each Sunday at 10, we meet on Tuesday nights at 7 for a more informal time of check-in and sharing. Please consider joining us for that gathering. And by way of announcements today, we have a forum at noon today to discuss the 8th principle proposal that we'll be voting on to adopt at our annual meeting. If you don't know what I'm talking about at all, what a great opportunity for you to come and learn more about that. This is the second such forum, and the Board of Trustees had a listening forum on a Tuesday evening. So we invite you to come today, whether or not you came to the first one. There is a separate Zoom link for that was included in the e-blast, and I will also post that link into the chat box in just a few moments. And also the other announcement is that our annual meeting will take place on June the 6th, so please be looking for your annual meeting packets in preparation for that meeting. And now I invite you to take a deep breath as we reaffirm our intentions to be a radically welcoming community. And I want us to really listen again today to this welcome, because we've already experienced some of the sanctuary of community that we experience together, that we can come together as we are, bringing what we will, knowing that we are accepted here as we are, however we're feeling, and that we are supported in the embrace of a sacredness that we find in community. So listen again to these common words. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever your religious beliefs are or aren't, you are welcome in this spiritual community. However you move in this world, how much or how little is in your bank account, however you are feeling in this moment, you and all of who you are welcome in this spiritual community. We are all enhanced by being together.
The words of our chalice lighting this morning are from Rachel Naomi Roman. We are all here to grow in wisdom and learn how to love better. As we each do this in our own ways, we slowly become a blessing to those around us and a light to the world. Please join me in our unison affirmation. Words are in the chat box. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join us by singing along in your own space with our opening song, Spirit of Life. The words are pasted in the chat window. The first verse is in Spanish and the second in English.
I don't know if my face will appear on the screen. They're doing a song. Okay.
Don't worry about that.
I've never seen a spirit of life dying.
Each week at UUCD, we include a brief UU moment in our worship service that serves to make us aware of and to nurture our connection to the larger body of Unitarian Universalists and the Unitarian Universalist Association that binds us together. For our UU moment today, we highlight a historical and heretical core of what it means to be UU through the lens of Thomas Starr King, who lived in the late 19th century. King served churches in both the Unitarian and Universalist movements before the UUA merged to form one association. And he famously summed up the differences between Unitarians and Universalists in this way. The Universalists think God is too good to damn them forever, and Unitarians think they are too good to be damned forever. In this, he articulates the fact that Unitarian Universalism has historically embraced both a larger-than-life confidence in the grace of God, whose care extends to all people, and B, an exalted view of human nature and potential. One of the two major seminaries that trains UU ministers is named after Thomas Starr King. It is called Starr King School for the Ministry and is located in Oakland, California. So now it's time for our joys and concerns, when we offer one another the opportunity to share very briefly what is most on our hearts right now, life's celebrations and concerns. As you do so, we invite you to light a candle in your own space. Through the action of sharing and kindling a flame, we give energy to our best thoughts, meditations, sympathies, celebrations, and prayers. We hold these as sacred in our collective hearts. We would also like to invite anyone new to our community to introduce yourselves if you would like. We welcome you warmly and will be pleased to light a candle in honor of your connection with us and whatever joys or concerns you carry in your heart. At this time, we invite you to change your view to gallery view in the upper right corner of your screen so that you can see everyone who is here. As you feel led, please unmute your microphone and share your joy or concern and light a candle if you have one. You can watch the mute signals in the lower left of each person's video stream to see if anyone else is unmuted. It's best if we share one at a time. Please mute your microphone after you have shared. Okay, we light one final candle for the joys and concerns that were not spoken by those of us here and in solidarity with others in our community who cannot be with us today.
As Unitarian Universalists, a central part of our worship in person and online is the opportunity we all have to practice the art of generosity and the spiritual practice of gratitude. Our gifts to our congregation are what allow our communities to live into our calling and mission. We are grateful to you for the many ways that you support our community, including your financial pledge and offerings. Your gifts matter, and it's one of the ways that you make the world a better place. Thank you for your passion and generosity. For those who are making pledges or want to contribute to UUCD, Please visit uucd.org and click on Support UUCD for more information about how to donate online. Our offertory for today is Our Father, the New Revised, by Susan Warner. This version was recorded live at Philadelphia Folk Festival.
Another song now from the Gospel of Truth. This song, a kind of prayer. It's a Sunday. If you, like many of the people in the campground this morning, worshiped at the Church of the Holy Comforter, the Cathedral of the Blessed Mattress, perhaps you missed your service. Please open your hymnal now. Thy kingdom come to every nation, thy will be done in everything we do. Lord, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from those who think they're you. Lord, send us forth to be of service, to build the schools, to dig the wells, and deliver us from the creepy preachers with their narrow minds and very wide lapels. Thy kingdom come to every nation, thy will be done in everything we do. Lord, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from those who think they're you. Lord, send us forth to bring compassion to every corner of the world. And please allow for women in the Catholic priesthood, and remind the Pope that he could have been born a girl. Thy kingdom come to every nation, thy will be done in everything we do. Lord, lead us now
Our reading this morning is from William Ellery Channing, who has been called the most important figure in the history of American Unitarianism, which is one of the precursors to the UUA. The great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon the young, but to stir their own, not to make them see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own, not to give them a definite amount of knowledge, but to inspire a fervent love of the truth, not to form an outward regularity, but to touch inward springs, not to bind them by ineradicable prejudices to our particular sect or peculiar notions, but to prepare them for impartial, conscientious judging of whatever subjects may be offered to their direction, not to burden the memory, but to quicken and strengthen the power of thought, not to impose religion upon them in the form of arbitrary rules, but to awaken the conscience, the moral discernment. In a word, the great end is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life.
Well, this morning, if it wasn't clear already, we are celebrating heresy, which I can honestly tell you I have not done in church before. And so once again, I find myself so grateful that UUCD is the type of community in which this kind of thing isn't at all out of the ordinary. Now, the reason I want to take the time to celebrate heresy is because it's actually a bedrock foundation of Unitarian Universalism, and one that I think we should be very proud of. Today's reflection may be a little heavy on history, but I promise that I will come back around to offering us some contemporary and practical encouragement by the time I'm finished. But let's begin with a definition. Heresy and heretic are words that derive from the Greek hieresis, and it originally meant to choose, or a thing chosen. Eventually, it came to mean a school of thought that was someone's choice, a philosophy or way of thinking. And religiously speaking, it was set up as the antithesis of, or the opposite of, orthodoxy, which means right thinking or correct belief. And a heretic was someone who held a belief, a worldview, or a theory that was strongly at odds with established beliefs or customs, especially those of a church or a religious organization. And just to be clear, heresy was not seen as a good thing. It most definitely was not celebrated. In fact, it carried along with it grave consequences, literally grave consequences. And in some cultures still today, those holding what others deem to be heretical religious views face punishment that ranges from excommunication, being thrown out of the religious community, to execution, actually being killed for their chosen beliefs. And one of the first uses of the term Unitarian was connected to a heresy. Specifically, one of the earliest heresies of the Christian church, the Aryan Controversy. In her book, Stories in Faith, Exploring Our UU Principles and Sources Through Wisdom Tales, Gail Forsyth Vale tells the abridged version of the story, and it goes something like this. Arius was a Libyan priest who lived in the 4th century. It was a time when the leaders of the Christian church were engaging in fierce debates about the nature of humanity and the nature of Jesus in particular. The Roman Empire was in crisis, and the Emperor Constantine thought that uniting the Christian church would be one way to strengthen and unify the Roman Empire and bring order to the outlying areas. And as I said, Christians were engaging in endless religious debates that often led to violence between partisans and riots that took place in the street. That was a significant annoyance to Constantine. And so in the year 325, he convened a council at his summer residence in Nicaea, in what is now Turkey. And he insisted that the bishops come together and agree on a creed that would bring unity to the church. Now, the main thing they needed to settle was a debate that had been raging in Alexandria, Egypt, between the priest Arius and his superior, the Bishop Alexander. And the question was about whether or not Jesus was human or divine. Was he just a good guy who embodied some divine principles, or was he in fact God in the flesh? Now, Arius was tremendously popular, in part because he was also a poet and a singer. So he sometimes taught or preached by putting lessons into poems and songs, much more fun and interesting to the people than plain words. And so many people flocked to hear him speak. And Arius and his fans and followers were convinced that Jesus was divine, kinda, but only in a way that was much less than God. And they believed that Jesus' wisdom and his teachings were more important than his death and resurrection, and that human beings could draw closer to the divine by following those teachings. On the other hand, Bishop Alexander had a different idea about Jesus. He said that Jesus had been one with God since the very beginning, and that when he was on earth, Jesus was God living as a human being. And with all of his authority, Alexander also claimed that Arius was a heretic for those views. This conflict and the extraordinary violence it stirred up is what prompted Constantine to convene that council at Nicaea. And he told the bishops to make up their minds once and for all about this question of the nature of Jesus. And then after this council, there was to be no more arguing. Constantine wanted that strong Roman Empire with one religion, and he meant to enforce whatever their decision was with the power of that empire. So Alexander and his supporters spoke to the council. They presented parts of the songs and poetry that Arius had written to prove that he was a dangerous heretic, maybe even an agent of the devil. And Arius didn't get to speak because he was a lowly priest. By the time they had finished, all but 2 of the 100 bishops were on Alexander's side, condemning Arius. So the bishops wrote a creed for the Christian church, a set of beliefs that everyone needed to agree to in order to belong. This same creed still being read in Christian churches around still today. Everyone was required to sign that creed. But Arius and the 2 bishops who supported him refused to sign it, and they were thus declared heretics and sent into exile from the church and from their home. So the official stance of the church became Trinitarian, that Father, Son, and Holy Ghost kind of thing. And those who agreed with Arius that God was only one became known as Unitarians. And the whole lot of them were declared by the council to be heretics. Now, it may seem very strange that an argument that took place in the 4th century about what may seem like utter nonsense would have so much influence on the eventual creation of the Unitarian Church well over 1,000 years after that, but it did. And that was only the beginning of the heresies that are our heritage. Another of our historical roots, Universalism, began with that heretical notion that God wasn't in the business of sending certain people to hell, and that in fact, all people everywhere could be included in the category of the faithful. Fast forward a millennium or so to about 1950, when the 2 U's of our heritage began having discussions about merging to form the UUA, and some other theological controversies began to emerge that pitted UU heretics against more orthodox UUs. The Humanist Theist controversy was perhaps the largest of those. It started with a debate about the source of religious authority. In other words, how do we know what we know? And where do we find divine inspiration? The transcendentalists were all up in that debate, along with those who wanted to maintain a closer association with the Jewish and Christian scriptures as authoritative. That then blossomed into a fight over whether Unitarianism should be more God-focused or more human-focused. And we still hear echoes of that disagreement today. With each heresy, each instance in which people chose a religious point of view or a set of beliefs that differed from the mainstream, there was a moment of spiritual revolution. And that's one of the parts of heresy that I celebrate, as well as the courage that it took those who went against the grain and chose to believe something contrary to the masses because it mattered to them. And subsequently, sometimes only decades later, their choice helped to reform the church. So our heritage moves from debates about the nature of Jesus all the way over to debates about whether such a thing as God exists at all. And Unitarian Universalism developed into the type of religious community that said, yes, all of that and more. We don't agree with one another, and that's okay. In fact, we kind of like the fact that our communities have room for people with very different, divergent views and practices, all held together by a set of principles about which we mostly agree. There is a poem that many Unitarians and Universalists quoted a lot in the 1950s, written by Edwin Markham, and it's called Outwitted. And it says, "He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in." That poem captures quite a lot that describes our aspirational inclusivity of various philosophies and theologies and spiritualities. And it is stated perhaps most directly in the fourth principle, which says that together we covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The free part of that is a direct descendant of this historical heritage. And the message is clear. If you want to be a heretic, well, hear, heresy. Be a heretic, please be a heretic. You are free to choose the truths that fit and that enhance your life with meaning. You are encouraged to do so. And we as a community want to support you in that quest. As Walt Whitman famously wrote, "Re-examine everything you have been told in school or church or in any book, and dismiss what insults your own soul." That is indeed a free search for meaning, isn't it? But there's a second part of the principle. That is, it's a free and responsible search for meaning. What does that mean, I wonder? Well, to me, it means that the truths we seek aren't just so we can outperform our family at Trivial Pursuit on holidays. It means that there is purpose in our search, a purpose that holds us accountable to our values, for the reasons we are alive to begin with, and that we're looking for meaning at all. We are responsible to create a life that matters, and not just for ourselves, but for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And ultimately, we are responsible to make this world in some way a little better than we found it. In 2005, the UUA Commission on Appraisal was tasked with exploring and producing a report, a groundbreaking report for us, on the topic of engaging our theological diversity. And I want to read you a paragraph from it that I think is still illuminating and important. So the commissioners wrote, "One fact has become clear in the course of our conversations with UUs concerning the issue of theology. With rare exceptions, conversations about beliefs and theology are not regular features of our congregational life. Repeatedly, people have told us, we don't talk about these sorts of things at my church. Everything we have observed suggests that we commissioners are breaking a taboo that Unitarian Universalism took on subconsciously at consolidation. This taboo seems to have been based on a fear that if we start to talk about our beliefs, we may discover we are totally incompatible with one another and our congregations will fall apart. At minimum, there is a rarely articulated fear of giving offense. what Rebecca Parker of the Starr King School for the Ministry referred to as our culture of niceness. We often give lip service to the ways in which theological diversity enriches our congregations, and there is no question that it could. However, all the evidence suggests that, in fact, the growing theological diversity within the UU culture, where tolerance and acceptance are considered paramount values, more commonly makes individuals so afraid of offending one another that conversation about belief and theology is stifled. Encouragement to spiritual growth is a stated goal of the congregational life in the UUA's principles, and the rich theological milieu present in most of our congregations would seem to be fertile soil for such growth. But if people are afraid to talk about and experience the diversity before them, then our potential for growth will be stunted. That was from their introduction to the report. Now, in my observations and in my conversations during courses and with collegial groups, it seems to me that statement is as true now as it was when it was written. Because we are a group of heretics, the inheritors of a legacy of heresy, and because we are individuals who have freedom to choose what we think and believe, we do indeed possess a wealth of resources. But if we are so afraid of offending one another that we fail to share the truths we've discovered, the ones that give us meaning, we are missing out on one of the greatest gifts that a congregation like ours can offer. In an essay on the fourth principle, Paige Getty writes, "With privilege and freedom comes responsibility. It is our responsibility to use our reason to serve our faith. And a responsible use of reason requires that we not rely solely on our own perspective, that we consider more than one perspective before coming to a conclusion. It calls us to acknowledge the legitimacy of perspectives that differ from our own. It compels us to remain open to new truths, new understandings, new meaning." So the encouragement that I want to leave us with today is to do this intentionally. Just as I said earlier, be a heretic, please be a heretic. I would add, share your heresies, share your choices with one another. Let's not skim the surface of a culture of niceness that requires we share nothing of the truths and meanings we have discovered in the interest of avoiding disagreement or debate. Dive deeper, go further. Be curious about the journeys of discovery that others have been on in their free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and tell people about yours. What a missed opportunity if we don't. It is all well and good to be a heretic on our own, but it is so much better and more fun to be heretical together. We could enhance one another's lives in so many ways by sharing the choices we have made and are making, because those choices that flow from our spiritual and life experiences form who we are and inform the actions we take to live out our faith. Let's not squander the resources of heresy that exist in this community. So I'll say one more time, hear, hear, heresy. Our closing song this morning is "Wake Now My Senses." And this version is by the Unitarian Church in Baltimore. Sing along loudly in your own environment.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May the love that gives to life its beauty, the reverence that gives to life its sacredness, and the purposes that give to life its deep significance be strong within each of us and lead us into ever deepening relationships with all of life and with one another. Amen, and may it be so. Our virtual worship this morning has ended, but our connection to one another and the earth endures. Go blessed to be a blessing for others.